In this video, I want to show you such service which is called Stepzen. It is a possibility to combine different sources of data in a single GraphQL API. And the sponsor of the video is Stepzen. So what problem Stepzen is solving for us? Just imagine that you have several sources of data. For example, you already implemented a REST API, but now you want to switch to GraphQL. Or maybe you have not just a REST API, but also a Postgres database or MySQL database, which means you have different sources of data. And you want to combine all this data in an API and use on the client. And actually, if you have different APIs like REST API, then additionally API to work with MongoDB database, then additionally one to Postgres or maybe Twitter API, this is quite a lot and it is not structured in any way. The main idea is that we can combine all these streams of data in a single GraphQL schema, which actually means our frontend or maybe mobile application will use just a single source of data. And as you can see here on the screen, we can define from where our data are coming from. For example, we can use here a database like MySQL or Postgres, NoSQL database, for example MongoDB, REST API, GraphQL, or use some of pre-built APIs. If you are interested what are pre-built APIs, here I opened GraphQL Studio of Stepzen and you can see on the left all different APIs which are already prepared for you. This is GraphQL API which you can simply inject in your own GraphQL API. As you can see here, we have GitHub, GitLab, Google Maps, Spotify, Trello, and much more. As you can see, after injecting this GraphQL schema in our own GraphQL project, we can simply make this request and get with your Trello key and Trello token all your boards, lists, and cards. And now I want to show you how we can convert real production REST API to GraphQL schema by using Stepzen. And the first step here is to create an account. After you are logged in, here the first step will be to install Stepzen CLI. This is a special CLI which will start for us the web server of Stepzen itself. This is why in the console we can simply copy npm install globally Stepzen. I am hitting enter and it is installed as global CLI on my machine. The next step here is to log in to Stepzen itself from the console. This is why we can simply copy-paste this line. Here is Stepzen login -a, which means account, and this is the name of my account. And actually here after registration, you will get an account name. This is why you can simply copy-paste this line and here you will have another name because you have another account. I will just write this code in the console and here I am getting a question, what is your admin key? And we have admin key here on the bottom. We can simply click here copy and paste it in the terminal. And we are getting message you have successfully logged in with Stepzen. So what API will we use to convert to our GraphQL schema? And actually, as you can see here, I opened Angular Real-World.io. If you don't know what is Real-World, this is a project which is built in different languages just to check how your code will look on a real application. And the main idea here is that we have here already prepared for us public API that we can use. And typically people are using it to build frontend. For example, as you can see here, we have requests to conduit production ready.io /API/user to get current user. Then we have feed to get list of the items and so on, which actually means we can simply use this REST API on our application and convert it to our GraphQL schema by using Stepzen. As you can see, I don't have any files in my folder. And the first thing that we want to create is index.graphql. This is the root file where we define all our different sources, which actually means here we will define REST API. We can add here, for example, connection to MongoDB, Postgres, or any other API. This is why here we can write schema, add, SDL, and here we open brackets and write files. And here we have an array of different files. In our case, I want to create rest.graphql. And after our round brackets, we need to put brackets. And inside we can write query equals query, which actually means in this file we defined that we have REST GraphQL file, which we will create in a second. And inside this REST GraphQL, everything that we will define will go in this query. This is why here I want to add new REST GraphQL file, and inside we will define how we will convert REST to our GraphQL schema. So what we need to do here, we need to define a new type, which is called query. And let's name our first query global feed. Why is that? Because actually when we're hitting here global feed tab, we're getting requests with our articles. And as you can see here, this is just a list of our articles and also articles count, which we can use to know the total amount of articles. This is why here I can write that we have a request global feed, and back we're getting global feed, which I will define in a second. And now inside we want to write @REST, which actually means here we will use our REST API. And inside we just need to provide a single property, which is called endpoint. And we can simply copy-paste the whole URL here. This is why I will copy-paste this URL and just paste here as our endpoint. And yes, I see here limit and offset. We will talk about them later. So we defined our first query, now we must start Stepzen, because here inside console we didn't start our Stepzen web server. For this we can simply write Stepzen start and hit enter. And here we are getting a question how our endpoint should be called, and we can name it how we want, but it should be two words separated with slash. This is why here I will write API/medium clone. I'm hitting here enter, and as you can see we have message starting, and now our local schema has the following GraphQL errors: unknown type global feed, which is actually correct because here we define global feed, but we don't have any type for global feed, which means actually everything is working, and as you can see web server of Stepzen is watching for our changes. Now how we can fix this global feed? And actually what I want to do, I want to jump here inside response and copy paste everything that we have. Because actually what I want to do, I want to generate GraphQL types based on our data. And here is a really nice service which is called JSON2 and here we can throw our JSON on the left and then just hit convert. And on the right we're getting a nice output of our types of GraphQL. We can just hit here copy and paste it here on the top in our REST GraphQL. So what do we have here? First of all, here we have an author. Why did we get an author at all? Actually, we have our articles, and inside every single article we have an author. This is why here it was created. And actually biography here is a string and not JSON. Then we have boolean string. This is totally fine. Now we have our new type article with author, as you can see here, and string, datetime string. It is all correct. And actually tag list here is an array of strings. And the last thing that we have here is our type root, which has articles, which is an array, and articles count, it is int. And actually here I want to rename our type root to our type global feed, because actually this is exactly what we are getting back. Now let's look on our web server. As you can see here, it is looking differently. First of all, we have a message file changed. And actually after every single change, Stepzen reloads the web server. Now we are getting a message deploying API medium clone to Stepzen. And actually the main idea is that Stepzen automatically not just run the web server on a local machine, it also deploys our project to production, which actually means we have this API URL and this is already production ready. We can just copy paste this URL and use in some frontend or maybe mobile application. As you can see here, we can test it in the console just by using this URL and attaching here two headers. First of all, we need here authorization header of your account, and secondly, we can provide here content type and data. And this is exactly query that we want to get. But what is more interesting for us now is this URL, because actually this is the local link, localhost 5001, and here we can open it inside browser and we're getting a nice GraphQL schema of our project. And for us, the interesting part is here on the docs, because we have here query. And when we open here query, we can see our global feed, which actually means we already generated with this code that we wrote here, just 3 lines, this new API. And here we know that we're getting global feed, it is correctly typed, and here is our request. So let's try to use it now. So we can write on the left query, and then inside global feed. And we actually need to provide what we are getting back. As you can see here, there is a list of subfields, just like in normal GraphQL. which actually means here we can write that we're getting back our articles and also articles count. I'm hitting here play, and as you can see, we're fetching this data from our real REST API, which actually means it is already working. We have Stepzen around our REST API. And what is really important with REST API, you don't have any documentation and you don't define what properties can exist there. And with GraphQL, we are getting everything out of the box. For example, here I can't write that I'm getting foo property because it does not exist inside an article. But what I can write here, I can write just a title, and then our data will be filtered. As you can see now on the right, we simply get 3 articles just with title, and you get this functionality from Stepzen out of the box. So our API is working, but what is bothering me is this limit and offset. Obviously, we need to provide 2 parameters here and not just a string. This is why what we can do here, we can define in the global feed that we have 2 parameters. First of all, it is limit, it is int, and it is mandatory. And secondly is offset, it is also int, and it is also mandatory. Now here inside we can inject them like properties with $sign. So it will be $limit, and here instead of 0, $offset. Let's save this, jump to the console. As you can see, we are getting deploying message again. Our API is already on production, and we can check if it is working. After page reload, we are getting here an error. We didn't provide here our limit and offset. We must do this. For example, limit 1 and offset also 1. As you can see now it is valid, let's hit play, and we are getting here just a single article, and articles count 3, this is our total, which actually means our logic is completely correct, and now we can pass arguments from our GraphQL API to our REST API, just by using this $sign. Now I want to do exactly the same, but to get a single article. This is why here we can create new field which is called article, and here we know that we must provide a slug, because actually we are finding our article by unique slug, and slug here is a string which is mandatory, and we are getting back our article which we defined on the top. Now inside we are doing exactly the same thing. Here we have our REST, and we must provide inside an endpoint. And here I can copy-paste completely this line because it will be super similar. It is /API/articles, and here we have just a slug, so here we can provide $slug. I'm saving this and our API is ready. First of all, what we must do here, we must know a slug of some item. This is why here I will get a list of articles with title and slug. As you can see on the right, we have this slug explore implementations 1. I will copy it and try to use our new query. So here we can write article, and we must provide inside the slug. I'm pasting here our slug, and we must say what we want to get back. At least it is title and slug. Let's check this out. I'm hitting play, and our API is almost working. So we're getting back data with article, but both fields are null. Why it is happening? Actually, this is how our response is looking like. We have an object with field article and all stuff inside, which actually means we can't really read title on our root object because we are nested here inside article. But actually our GraphQL does not need it at all. This is why what we can say here, after our endpoint, we can provide result root. And in our case, it will be our article. And don't forget, always inside GraphQL file, we must write double quotes. Let's check this again. I'm hitting here play, and we're getting our article back. And in this case, it is working because we defined here that we're reading result root from our article property. Now it is time to talk about mutations. Actually, sometimes we want to log in a user or create an article, and this is not a query, this is a mutation. This is why now we want to convert several APIs to our mutations inside GraphQL. So first of all, here we must define a type, which is mutation. Now the first field that we want to define inside mutation is registration. This is why here let's make a register, and first of all we need here a username, which is a string and it is mandatory. Also we need here an email, it is also a string and it is mandatory. And last one is our password, which is also a string. And what we are getting back, we are getting current user. And actually we didn't define current user on the top, this is why we must do it. So we can write here type current user, and this is what fields we are getting back. If you're just curious from where I took these fields, we can jump directly in our Conduit project and reload the page. As you can see, here is a request for the user. Actually, it is not register request, but just get user, but the response is exactly the same. We have here biography, email, image, token, and username. This is exactly all these properties. So here we defined our register request, and now we can write here our REST API. First of all, here we must define an endpoint, and this is our URL to register a user. Secondly, we must provide here a method. In our case, it will be post. And also we must provide here a body. And actually providing a body inside GraphQL is tricky. So inside our string, we must provide an object. And inside we have a key user. But as you can see, it is invalid. This is why we must backslash this user property. Now, as a key, we have also an object with several fields, username, email, and password. Let's start with username. We must also wrap it in double quotes, and it is again directly invalid, so we need to backslash it. Now here is our value, and actually value is also a string, so we need to use backslashes here, and now inside we want to provide a property. And to provide a property here inside Stepzen, we're using double brackets, then dot and get. After this we put space and we provide the name. So here we want double quotes again, backslash, backslash, and inside we're providing our username. So here inside our double quotes, we could provide just a normal string, but we want to provide here a value from our register parameters. This is why here we have this notation with brackets, then .get, and then here we have our username. In this case, we will set it inside our body. Now we need to do exactly the same with email and password. This is why I will copy paste the whole content, put comma here and paste it again, then comma and paste it again. Now we need to change here username to email. Here we have get email, and the last field will be password here and get password. So once again, in the mutation we provide endpoint, method post, and post body, which is a stringified JSON. As you can see, we don't have any errors, so let's try to use it now. I want to write here mutation and not query, and now we have our register mutation. So we're providing here our username, which must not exist, because in other case our request won't be valid. We also provide here an email, it also should not exist, and the last one is password, for example 123. Now here we want to get back at least the username. Let's hit here play and check for the response. Actually, it worked and we registered a user, but here username is null. And we have exactly the same problem like here, result root article. Here we are getting our result inside property user. This is why here we must provide it inside. Let's check again. I'm hitting here play and we are getting message HTTP error unprocessable entity. And we are getting this error because this email already exists and we can't register user. This is why here let's change our username and email and hit play again. As you can see, now we are getting our data back and we successfully registered a user and got here back his username. And the last thing that I want to show you is how to create an article. Because actually we successfully registered a user, we can get a token of the user, which means we can use it to create an article, because only logged in user can create an article. This is why here what we can do, we can add a new mutation and name it create article. And now here we need several fields. First of all, it will be title, which is mandatory. This is why here mandatory string. We also need here description. It is a string, but it is not mandatory. Then body, it is a string. And the last one is token. It is a mandatory string. So what is token? This is actually our unique identifier from the client, which we obtain after getting a user or after registration. And with this token, backend knows that we are allowed to create an article. And here back we're defining that we're getting our article. Now inside we're using REST again, and we must create first of all an endpoint, and we're providing inside API real-world.io API articles, then our method will be post, and now here we must provide post body in exactly the same way. So here is our object where we have a field article, this is important, and inside we have an object first of all with title, here we have get title, then description get description, body get body. But as you can see, we didn't use here our token. So what we are doing with token? Actually, this is a REST request and token goes inside headers. This is why here we can define our headers, which is an array. And in our case, we want to provide here an object with name authorization, and value here will be string with word token, space, and here $token. And obviously this $token is coming here from our parameters, but if you're curious why the string is looking like this is exactly how API wants to get a GVT token. Now let's check if it's working. First of all, we must obtain a token. For this, I will just change our username and email, so we're registering new user, and here I can write token. I'm hitting here play, and we're getting this token, and we can use this token to make a create article request. So let's write here create article, and we must provide inside first of all our title, then our description, then our body, and the last one, which is the most important, is our token for authentication. And after this, we must provide what properties we want to get back. At least we need a title and a slug. Let's hit here play and check if it's working. Actually, yes, it worked. We got title and slug and no errors here, but we still need again this result root. This is why I can copy here result root and paste it here on the bottom. In this case, we will get our data correctly. But now we need to change our title because in other case it will be invalid. I'm hitting here play and we got our create article back. But most importantly, it was an authenticated request, which actually means we not only used here our post request for REST, but we also authenticated it with a token. As you can see, Stepzen is quite a versatile tool, and if you want to try it, make sure to check the link in the description box below.